And we'll just kind of sink into things while we let people float into the class. Is there anything that anybody would like to hear about today or have addressed? Or anything you're noticing in your practice that you'd like to talk about? Yes, Amrita. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, okay. Has, I mean, I imagine the nature of these things are somewhat distressing situations. Yeah. So, just for the recording, because I don't just for your privacy, I don't have them record your voice. What's been said is that lately, one of the students has been having things happen in their day that then replay over and over and over and over again in their head, and comes with all the feelings of just reliving it. So as human beings, we are designed to prevent disaster. We are designed to and wired to see the negative in everything. And the reason that we do that is because it provides a survival advantage, right? So back in the day when life was, seriously dangerous, having an eye out for the worst possible thing that could happen was a very advantageous thing to be. If you look at a cheetah, on the Mara, they are constantly watching for well, cheetah's not fair. Cheetahs are watching for food, but I mean most animals are watching for cheetahs and trying to make sure that they don't get eaten. For us, we have entered this world that frankly we are not evolved for, right? Our world changed faster than evolution can keep up with. And so we find ourselves constantly in this fight or flight mode. And what that looks like is we are always looking for any bad thing that can happen. And if something bad happens, we then start replaying it in our head over and over and over again as a mechanism to try and prepare for it to not happen again in the future. It's a hard sell to get yourself to stop doing that. I can tell you in shamanism, the techniques that my teacher used to use are techniques you wouldn't enjoy. All right. My teacher, if she caught a student stuck in their head over something, she would make them, like, first, she would throw them into a leech-filled pond. Then she would, she softened in her years, and she would basically make you march into a leech-filled pond. Um, Sometimes her teacher would actually push her face into mud. And the shock of that would bring you back into the present moment. And while I have no intention of doing any of those things to you, and I don't suggest that you cover your body in leeches, there's a lesson in that is worth taking in. And the lesson is that maybe it's that important that you get control over your mind, right? Imagine how important it must be to your spiritual progress that those of us who were really giving ourselves to this were willing to let someone do that to us just to shock us out of our spiral. Just take that in. That's right. Right. So yeah, by repeating that cycle in your head over and over again, what you're literally doing is you are training pathways in your brain to get better and better at feeling the very feelings you want to avoid. And so the road out of that has many different angles to it. So, one of the things that we used to do is we would maybe go and just part the grass and put our face in the grass or just do something that is outside of the norm to shock us out of it. For me, I found, back then I used to love like Calvin and Hobbes comics. And so I would just sit down and shift my attention and read a Calvin and Hobbes comic, and for me that was enough. For some people it's not. Some people are just really stuck in it and they need to, they need someone to help kind of shock them out of it a little bit. But the idea is that you make a choice, right? You make a choice to put yourself in a different situation. And I don't think filling a sink with some ice and just dunking your head in it is a bad thing to do, right? It's not going to be painful. It's going to shock your system a little bit and kind of put you back into your body. Anything that puts you square back into your body is going to help you pull out of a mental cycle. So there's just that practical, in the moment, what are you going to do? So let's see. When I am working with students, sometimes what I'll do is I will tell them in that moment, place your attention on me right now, and now do what I do. And I will take my hands and I'll do something like, and I will make them do that with me. I'll make them focus on something very intense like that that is not harmful to them in any way. And what that does is it moves that energy through them and helps them. The other thing you can do is EFT. So EFT is that tapping that we've done sometimes in class. And if you go to the website bodymindtapping.com, I've got lots of trainings there that you can put yourself through. They're free. You could go do the EFT for anxiety, and that would get you close enough to what you need to know to be able to work with whatever it is in that situation that is causing you to return to it. But the trick with something like that is you need to get really specific with what it is that's making you return to it. And you want to get into your senses. So is it the look on somebody's face? Is it the condescending tone in their voice? Or did it get coded in some weird way? Like, is it just the fluorescent lights shining against the desk? You need to get really specific with what the sights, sounds, taste, smell, touch is. And then if you perform the EFT tapping while using the setup statements and reminders that I teach you about on that website, you will find that you can get that trauma out of your system and you stop returning to it so much. But then, so those are all things you can do in the moment. But how do we become someone who is less likely to fall into that trap And I think that really is kind of the level of question appropriate for a class like this. And it really comes down to understanding. So let's do this, actually. Why don't we go into meditation right now? And then we're going to come back to this question, okay? I want to get you guys kind of focused and breathing. And then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about this in a way that can get you to a place where this happens less often to you. Does that sound okay? But I would definitely, if you have not gotten into the tapping, it's amazing, okay? It is backed by research. It works. It's something I know a lot about. I've trained in it for years. And the materials that I put together, if you go to the guides, EFT Tapping for Anxiety, if you go to the anxiety guides, it's the best training you're going to get in tapping. It's got a million different uses. And we'll start doing tapping circles soon. I've been thinking about that lately. I've got to get through this kind of rough 6-week period of my life. And then I think we'll start doing some tapping circles on separate nights here and there, maybe once a month. Okay, so for now, let's just step into the meditative state. So attention at the forehead and crown. Let yourself just kind of slow down to a stop. Just feel that transition. You can hear it in my voice. We're just moving from that place where everything is happening in succession to a place where if it all just stopped, it'd pretty much all be fine. And in that place of stopping, your consciousness can unfold and fill the entire room. Where your mind is touching everything all at once. Not bad, guys. This is a good group. Smaller tonight, but you guys are experienced. It's almost like every cell, every fiber of your being has its own hand, and that hand is just opening up and letting go. Just a gentle, open hand. Everything can flow. The cell can receive energy. It doesn't have to cling to it. It doesn't have to hang on to it. It can just let it go because more is coming. And you can experience the truth of that. You can feel it. right here, right now. These parts of you where the river of life has not been allowed to flow freely. These little cesspools of tension and toxicity. Let that hand just fall open. Let the floodgates open. And just let everything move. Let it be exactly what it is. As you breathe in and breathe out. Take a few moments and just step into that. Now, rather than looking down like we usually do, look up. Stay in that space, but take in the whole room. Don't focus on any one part of it. Just let it all be there at once. And don't hold any part of it in place. Set it free. If it wants to become something different, set it free to become something different. It may stay exactly the same, but you're not investing in it. All the little names you've given everything in the room, the door, the light, the desk, the chair, let them all go. Release your knowledge. and just be with their pure expression. You may even see them start to wiggle a little bit, like they're not as solid as they looked before. They're just interpretations of something in your mind. You have senses that are picking up on things, and then your mind is turning them into forms you can understand. And you've done that according to how you were taught. So you have a system handed to you by humanity. Let go of the system and just be with what's left. As you just sit here and breathe, set it free. And notice the feeling you get in your body when you set the world around you free. Where is the line between the freedom you give the world around you and your own experience of freedom? Or are you what you give? If this world is being assembled inside your head, where is the line between the story of you and the story of the world? And is it real? Is it a real line? Or does your entire sense of self change when you change the freedom that you give to the world around you? Just notice. Set it all free. Sure, you have obligations after this class is over, but for now, set them free. Have no idea what meeting that obligation is going to be like. If you're going to bed, this may be the best night's sleep in your life. have no idea. Set it free. Need nothing. Set it free. Need nothing. Set it free. Let go of that demanding part of you and need nothing. Give yourself that experience. Don't let me move on without you first having that experience and feeling that shift in your body. It's not an intellectual teaching. You have to catch it. And if you can catch it and recognize it, it's yours. Take a few more moments to really catch it, because then we're going to step down into the intellect for a little while and show you different roads into this realization. This is the ultimate answer to your question, Amrita. This experience. But sometimes you can't jump right into this in a moment. At least not in the beginning. So there are some tools to detach your intellect. So, in those moments where you can't just set something free, in those moments where you can't just release your investment, maybe you've spent a certain amount of your personal power for that day and you just don't have somebody there to shake you awake. That's where teachings of understanding come in. So in Buddhism, the word that they use for understanding is pradna. Pradna paramita is the teaching of this. And I'm not going to give it to you the way a Buddhist usually gives it. I'm going to give it to you the way I experience it. But it has to do with how you view life. There is this sense that there are good and bad things in life. And there is a sense that there are good and bad people in life. It isn't really true. At least not from the lens of somebody who is spiritually waking up. There are bad matches in life. There are people who their goals are not consistent with yours. But as humans, we have this kind of arrogant sense about us that we think the entire world is about us. We think that everything is here for a human being. And it's not true. I mean, if you look at animals, they are not just figuring out a way to provide us with some Disney moment. I mean, we make enough videos that make it look like that, but the truth is, you may love elephants and want to have some beautiful experience with an elephant, but you get close enough to an elephant, you're going to get stampeded. Those elephants have their own goals and their own reasons for being where they are, and those reasons mostly have nothing to do with us. There are spiritual beings that people encounter throughout their life, and those spiritual beings, they're not all there to make your life better. And that doesn't make them evil. It just makes them not about you. One of my favorite examples of that comes from a woman named Josephine McCarthy. But she talks about The Exorcist. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen The Exorcist. I loved horror movies growing up. So this is an example that just checks a lot of boxes for me, I guess. But so The Exorcist is the story of a girl who gets possessed by a demon named Pazuzu. And this girl ends up, becoming very ill, doing a lot of lewd, violent things, and then eventually some priest comes along, sprinkles them with some holy water, and the demon goes on its way. And so there's this sense that this demon is evil, and this demon comes from, I think, Babylonian times. I think it's a historical demon that was known to kill babies. So there were babies that were just dying, and it was this demon named Pazuzu. And so there's this sense that Pazuzu is this evil, right? They're this demon, But demon is just a word that the Catholic Church handed to certain, beings, right? And no one ever really considers what any of that means. So if you go back and look at what that being was meant to do, that being's job was not there to cuddle humans. That being's job, it was a land being. It was there to protect the earth. It was there to protect the very specific land, Babylonian land, I believe. And the problem started to arise during a certain period of time where people were starting to populate that land in a bigger and bigger way, and cities were popping up, and massive damage was being done. People were being very wasteful and debaucherous, and then all of a sudden it just ignited this land being that went around solving the problem, right? I mean, you're overpopulating the earth. I'm going to take away some of the babies. And we hear that and think, oh my God, babies, that's so horrible. But it's really no different than what your immune system does if bacteria decide to start populating your body. You mobilize a response and you start killing them off. And it's not because your immune system is evil. It's because your immune system is not about the bacteria. Your immune system is protecting something else, and so it's doing its job. A spider is just being the best spider it knows how to be. It's not evil, even if it bites you. And I guess my point is, if we can recognize this and forgive and understand the demon in The Exorcist, we should be able to do that for just about any human being. You know, the people in your world who, even the ones that are out to get you, it's not that they're evil. It's that they are viewing things through a completely different lens, and they have a completely different goal, and that goal does not consider you. And a lot of times it is that they are at a certain stage of their development that is just of a lower consciousness than you are. You know, the truth is, in order to really evolve lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, to get to a place where you can even sit in a class like this and learn, the spiritual teaching is that you pretty much have to have been everything else along the way. The sinner, the saint, the prostitute, the murderer, the adulterer. You have to have a lot of experience with things that don't work very well to get to a place where you can commit yourself to something that works. And so when we see people going through those things, we just have to understand it. Doesn't mean we need those people in our life. You know, you don't need to keep a person like that in your life. Sometimes you end up in a situation where you can't get quite enough distance from a person. Like I'm in that situation right now on these guidelines that I run. You know, I'm an epidemiologist, and I run the clinical guidelines in my field. And I have a lot of physicians that think they should be in charge of everything. And they shouldn't be. They don't know what they're doing. But I have to contend with their egos and their feelings and things like that. And a lot of them, well, 2 of them, have become downright abusive. They run around, they lie about my program in public, and, you know, they do it mostly with impunity. You know, it's a very strange world I'm in. But in moments like that, you have to look up and just recognize your role in that process. A person can only do something to you if you allow it. You know, I was explaining this to the CEO of our company. I said, well, the fact is, people like this don't create themselves. They grow in permissive environments. I don't know why this organization is a permissive environment of this, but I won't be. And so I just make a decision that that person will have no place on my guidelines. I don't respond to their emails, and they can feel however they want to feel about it. And I just decide that that's okay. I accept whatever consequences that brings. If it means I get fired, it means I get fired. And you know what'll happen? I'll do something else. It's fine. I'll do that until we die, which is like 15 minutes from now, right? I mean, life is short. So I don't look at it and consider them bad people. I just consider them at a stage of development that does not jibe very well with my own, and something I don't want to have in my space. And so I step away from it. But if you can't, what you do is you just figure out where your boundaries are and what's going to be okay for you and what isn't. And then, with no emotion, you just state your boundaries very clearly whenever someone's about to cross them. And then you go home and you meditate on understanding that person. You meditate on understanding what that person is there to teach you, what part of you brought that in, what part of you was permissive enough that that was able to come in. 9 times out of 10, and maybe 10 times out of 10, if someone is doing something to you, it's something that you have done to others that you've never really examined in yourself. And you might not have done it in the way that they're doing it, but the underlying principle that makes them comfortable doing that is a principle that you have lived in at one time or another and haven't worked out in yourself. You know, right now, these physicians are scared that someone thinks they're not smart enough. That's the reality. They don't like that someone thinks they're not an expert in something. And they don't like that there's someone there who can call them out on things. And they're not in a place where they're just grateful for the lesson and grateful to take the hit and learn from it. That's something I've been stuck in myself many, many times. And so I know that this thing that's happening to me is reflecting a part of myself that I just haven't bothered to clean up yet. And so I work on it. And it takes time, you know. If I'm triggered or traumatized in the moment, I can do my tapping or my meditation or whatever. You do something. You don't just sit in it. You do something to step into it and start letting the floodgates move through it. You know, you let everything open up. But then you just ask yourself, you know, who have I done this to? What's the closest I've come to doing something like this to somebody? Or what's the underlying principle that they're running on? And where have I lived out that principle before? I guarantee you'll see something. Funny thing is, after you do that, and if you really own it and learn it, that specific thing will stop happening to you. You know, so I coach people through tapping. And one of the things that we do in our sessions is, you know, so they'll have something that's really fresh that we'll be working on together. And we'll tap it out and we'll get their distress from like a 10 down to maybe a 2. And then I'll ask them, okay, so what kind of thoughts went through your head while you were doing that? And there's very often this memory that they bring up that they themselves cannot see that memory is basically the same situation from 30 years ago. That they've lived the same cycle out over and over and over again. And it's like, to me, it's really obvious. To anybody, it would be really obvious. But to them, they can't see the connection. They don't want to tap on it. They can't see the connection. And that's why it happens over and over, because they can't see the connection. You know, so as a coach for that, it's helpful because I can actually make them do it. I can say, no, we're gonna tap on this. I don't care if you don't feel distress over it. It's coming up for a reason. And the thing is, you tap on that, and suddenly it brings down like all these other things at once, and suddenly your stress levels go way, way, way down. So that's the road into dealing with that. That's how you stop that from happening in the long term. In the beginning, you just deal with the fact that a part of you's on fire. Okay, so you shift your attention through some stark new experience, shock yourself out of it. You do your tapping, or you try to just go into meditation. But if you're triggered, that's going to be hard. So tapping will get you there in a smoother way. But then you do some introspection. And your goal is to take as much responsibility for what's happening as possible. And it doesn't make them right. It just helps you recognize the mechanism of how this is coming into your life. Because the truth is, if there weren't something to see there, it wouldn't upset you. there are things that upset me that someone else, they're just like, why does that bother you so much? But for me, it like pushes all these buttons. And it's because there's something there for me to work on. And I need to own that rather than trying to shift the blame, point a finger. I need to own that. My teacher's teacher used to say that the cost of freedom is absolute responsibility. The cost of freedom is taking 100% responsibility, even for the things that are happening to you from other people. It's a tough road. It's a fierce road, but that is the road of a spiritual warrior. If you do that, your meditation will hit new heights. Your understanding of the world around you will become so nuanced. Your compassion for other people will become otherworldly. You'll just always understand what you're looking at. So that's my teaching for you tonight. Are there any questions about any of that? My pleasure, Amrita. We're all going through it, right? It's what this world's about. You're not here for things to be easy. This is not the world of easy. This is a world of smoke and mirrors. You know, a world where we are constantly just impacted by the illusion of these flimsy opposites, good and bad, good and evil. None of it is real in that sense, though. Its ultimate reality is that everything is fine. Even your death is fine. Not a problem. Your worst case scenario is fine. Doesn't mean you don't try. Doesn't mean you don't try and build a story in life. But you can operate that story a lot easier if you understand where those lines are and if you take responsibility. Thanks, Sarah. Okay, everybody, I think I am going to let you get back to your life tonight. Thank you for coming, and I'm happy to answer any other questions anybody has. Otherwise, I'm going to let you go. Anything else? All right, I'll see you next Thursday.